It's another podcast at JoetteCalabrese.com, and today we've got a new episode for the Moms with Moxie miniseries.
All the way from my desk in New York, I get to see how homeopathy is transforming lives all over the globe. And some of my students have really caught my eye. Some of you have done all you can to learn how to cure those around you using homeopathic medicines. Your successes inspire me, and they're glorious and powerful. And I can't keep your successes a secret any longer. So, with help from my roving reporter, Paola, we bring you this mini podcast series that I call Moms with Moxie. It's actually grandmoms too, but it's Moms with Moxie. See how regular mothers and others, average people who want to cure those around them, have gone from freaking to fabulous with homeopathy.
All right, I am here with Kate Bichard from Wisconsin. I'm very happy to have her. Kate has a lot of knowledge about homeopathy and some pretty extreme experiences with it, which probably weren't fun at the time, but they're fun to talk about now that everything turned out well. But she is a mother of two children. One's a teenager and one's entering their teenage years. She loves horses. They do a lot of activities with their horses, and they love music. And Kate says that she is passionate about healing and learning. So welcome, Kate.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, Joette and I both think you're definitely a mom with Moxie. And yes, it's real good. And we love Moms with Moxie because you guys are willing to do what it takes to learn and take on the challenges. So, Kate, we've been talking a lot about homeopathy leading up to this interview. Share with us, what are your favorite remedies? And maybe tell us why.
With homeopathy, I get super excited, and I think it's super hard to have just a few favorite remedies, don't you?
Yeah.
So this is a challenge, but I will tell you just a couple. Of course, arnica. Who could live without arnica, right? You have kids, you have animals, you need arnica.
Right.
So that's definitely have to have that with me at all times.
A lot of people have arnica and they don't even know they're using homeopathy. That's how popular arnica can be. Yep.
It is. That's why I hate to say it's a favorite remedy, but it's so important for accidents. And we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yes.
But so arnica is one of my favorites. Arsenicum is another one of my favorites. My kids actually have not had the stomach flu in 5 years, and I attribute it to God and arsenicum because pretty much every time they tell me they have a tummy ache, I tell them to take some arsenicum.
Right. Great for tummy aches and kind of gastrointestinal issues.
So another favorite remedy that I have is ledum, and that is a remedy that I use quite often as well for bee stings, bug bites, tick infections, things like that. And so it's definitely one of my go-to remedies.
That's awesome. I love it. I'm always surprised at how much ledum helps, sometimes even more than apis when it comes to bee stings, which is kind of counterintuitive because apis is from bee sting, but often ledum is the one that acts a little bit better.
Right. Yes, I have found that to be true as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely consider ledum if you get any sort of bite and inflammation from the bite.
Okay, so it feels like you've been doing homeopathy for a long time, even maybe before you learned about JoetteCalabrese.com. So tell us how long you've been doing homeopathy.
Yeah, I have been studying homeopathy for about 6 to 7 years now. And at first, when I learned about homeopathy, I learned about classical homeopathy, which is where you would take and use one remedy at a time. And you look at everything about a person, psychological, emotional, physical. I remember being frustrated in the beginning because it takes so much time to figure out the right remedy because you have to look at every symptom. And there are thousands of remedies to choose from. So when my kids would have a cough, it would take me about 45 minutes to try to figure out what to give them for their cough. And so Joette has rocked my world. She has changed our lives. And this morning when I was thinking about our interview, I was even emotional because I was so thankful for how she has changed our lives with what she teaches. When I met Joette, I found her on the internet, and then I actually had a consult with her for one of my children. And then I've been taking her courses. I think I've taken almost all of her courses. So about 4 years now, I've followed Joette, and our lives have changed drastically. And it's so much easier to use homeopathy now. And so I just really encourage people to take a look at what she has to offer and the Banerjee protocols.
I just think that is just so inspirational. And that's why we're doing this podcast series, Moms with Moxie, because we think that it's just Joette that has all this success. But it's true that if you dedicate yourself, you can really learn. And I mean, do you agree? I do not live in abject fear of illness.
Yes, and that's why I say she's rocked my world, because I used to be afraid of, my daughter had pneumonia one time, and she ended up in the hospital. And that was actually when I was just starting to learn about homeopathy. And it was the classical homeopathy, and I tried different things. This is a funny story. So I tried a couple different things. She was so bad that she was passed out on the couch. You couldn't have any light on, don't talk around me.
Oh, wow.
Extremely high fever, couldn't keep anything down. And so I was thinking, I can do this, right? I can do this. I can find the right homeopathic remedy. I don't want to put her on antibiotics.
And those are pretty loud symptoms. So you think that helps pick a remedy, right?
Right. And so I went through a couple different remedies. And after so many hours, as a mom, you get worn out. You just think, oh my gosh, am I doing this right? I want to care for my daughter. And so I finally tried a remedy. I don't even remember what it was. I'd have to look at, I keep a notebook with everything that I give my kids throughout the years so I can remember what works for them. But anyway, I just decided I've had it. She's sick and I'm tired and I want to do the right thing. So we took her to the emergency room. And by the time that we got there, the remedy worked.
No.
So we were in there, and she's sitting up in the wheelchair, and she's telling them all the registration information. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
No. So what'd you do?
So I was just tired. You know, they did treat her. They gave her an inhaler and some other things just to clear her lungs. And by that time, you know, I was just exhausted and I just needed help, you know. But she really was on the mend by the time that we got there. Using the protocols that Joette teaches, it's so much easier.
It helps kind of preserve your strength. You're right. We actually were just talking about, you know, just before this interview, how I had a sick farm animal, one of our cows. And I'm telling you, it wore me out, you know, to try and figure out the remedies with the protocols. So I can't imagine. I mean, he would have had antibiotics if I hadn't even been able to narrow it down to a couple of protocols to pick from.
Exactly. It's so amazing. So I'm a big fan of Joette and the Banerjee protocols.
Yep. So you mentioned to me about your daughter. She had a couple of conditions that you felt like homeopathy made it so they were gone permanently.
Yes. One of the first things that I did with Joette is we addressed my daughter's eczema. And so we treated her, and she had eczema when she was little, which led me into the whole natural health world. First, I tried using nutrition, which is great. Nutrition is great. Found out she was allergic to a couple of things at the age of 2. And we stopped giving her those things and she got better. But then it popped up again. And I used herbs and I used essential oils. And then I feel like all those things are great. But when you find homeopathy, wow, you know, you're just so excited because it works like nothing else does. So Joette helped me, and we treated her with antimonium crude 200 combined with arsenicum album 200 twice daily. We also gave her carb 200 every other day. And that did it. That got rid of her eczema permanently. Whereas before it would go away and it would come back and go away, come back. And she hasn't had it in, I think, 4 years now.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. I love it. Oh, and Joette does talk about that protocol quite a bit. I think she talks about it in Good Gut, Bad Gut. Obviously, she talks about it in Skin, and on her blog, it's there.
Yes, it's a fantastic protocol. My daughter also had asthma, and we've been working with that over the years. We used Kali Carb 200 twice daily for a while, got rid of the asthma, but then it came back. And now we've been using the last, I'd say 4 months, we've been using Lacacies 100 every other day. And that in the 4 months or so that we've been using it, she hasn't had severe asthma attacks. So that's been amazing. When she gets an asthma attack, it's very short and very little. So I'm really confident that that's going to take care of her asthma. And the other thing is that when she does have an attack, she uses kali iodidum, and that helps her with the attack, and she doesn't need to use an inhaler.
So she used that in the acute. And that's the magic markers Joette talks about, where you look at for an improvement in frequency, intensity. There's a whole podcast where she talks about how to look for improvement. And so as she continues to improve, you can expect to wean her off of these remedies.
Exactly. And I think sometimes people get frustrated and think if it's a chronic condition that, oh, it's not working, but they don't look at the overall picture of, like you're saying, Paula, how often they have the issues and how intense they are. And I think it's good to really write those markers down, the symptoms, and really take a look month to month to see if it is changing, because, you have chronic conditions that have taken, years to come about in your body, and it's not just overnight that they disappear. So we need to have patience and stick with things for a while.
Yes, patience is the big one. You definitely learn patience with homeopathy, which is a good thing, I think it's impatience that leads us to, the drugs and the antibiotics, because it's so easy. It seems so easy, and tempting.
But then if you think about it, and I know that you know this, but you take an antibiotic, say, for whatever condition, what you're doing is you're just masking the symptoms. You might feel better, but it's going to drive that condition into maybe something else in your body. It's going to come out in another way. And so you're not really healing your body. You're just getting over it for that time, and then it comes back again, like asthma or chronic cough, whatever it is, eczema, like happened with my daughter. So we really want to try to do something that's going to empower our bodies to heal for good.
Right. Okay. So another thing, Kate, that I was impressed with in your little family of homeopathy is that it sounds like your daughter, who's 15, right? She's getting pretty good at homeopathy. I love to hear that, because, I want to pass this on to my children and my grandchildren. So tell me about that, how it's been teaching your daughter, and how do you do it?
Well, I think the biggest way is just she sees me use it, and she sees the success with it, and then she builds up the confidence to use it as well. And for myself and for my children, it's repetition, really just doing it, seeing me help other people with it, and then that even gives them more confidence. And so one of the things that I do is I send them wherever they go, like if they go stay at a friend's house or on a trip or something, I give them a bag of homeopathy, a Ziploc bag.
I love it.
And I put a card in the bag, and it tells them, so for a tummy ache, take this. For a headache, take this. For a fever, take this. For an accident, take this. A cheat sheet so that they can know what to do, because when I'm sick, I can't think clearly.
I love that. I teach a little study group class on homeopathy using Joette's curriculum, the study group curriculum, and I help people all the time. But sometimes when I'm sick, they'll call, or a friend will hear and come over or something, and I'll be sick, and they'll say, well, don't you need to just take like Ignatia because you're so stressed about your farm animal? I'm like, I'm the worst patient of myself. I can use it. And so it would be so nice, because my husband, like, all he knows is aconite and barsol. So he's like, no help. I can't wait. My kids could step up and help them.
Exactly. Also this fall, my daughter's going to be taking some of Joette's courses. And so that's exciting too, because I feel like she will learn more about the remedies and how to use them. She's very good at using them right now. She's pretty good. I would definitely ask her if I had an issue.
That's awesome. I love that. It's so generational. This is so generational. I love that. You're going to share with us a copy of that little cheat sheet you give your kids, and we will put it on Joette's blog under this podcast, so you can visit the podcast and we can see a copy of that.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So moving forward, I know we have kind of a big culminating story we want to share about an unfortunate accident you experienced. But before we get there, are there any experiences you want to share with us with homeopathy?
Sure, yeah. There are so many stories. Oh my goodness, that's my favorite thing to talk about. So one thing that I remember that happened last summer, my son went biking, And he went with a friend of his, and they just took off down these trails, and there was a lot of hills, and he had never ridden his friend's bike. He jumped on his friend's bike, and they went over a big hill, and his friend's bike was different. It didn't have the same braking system that he was used to. So he was airborne, and he landed, and his bike hit first. His head hit the handlebar of the bike, and then he flipped over backwards and landed on his back. They were way deep in the woods. I was waiting for them to come back. I didn't know where they were or how to find them. So he came back pushing his bike, really kind of dazed. And the first thing I did, of course, was run and get the Arnica, and I gave him Arnica. And I thought that I had aconite with me, but I did not. Now, aconite is a great remedy for shock. So we were about 10 minutes away from town, and the Arnica helped him, but he was not talkative. He was very quiet. I knew that he was shocky. So I just put him in the van, and I drove to town, and I drove to our local health food store, and I bought some aconite 30 because they only have the 30 potencies. Otherwise, I would have used 200. Mm-hmm. And I gave him some aconite 30. And within 5 to 10 minutes after giving him that, he was talkative and joking around and acting normal. And I was like, should I take him to the emergency room or give him aconite? You know, it was a serious accident. And so I just stayed in town a little while just to make sure that, mm-hmm. That all these symptoms were going away. And the aconite did it for him. And I just continued the Arnica 200 and aconite, just alternating them for a little while. And then we ended up continuing with the Arnica 200 because he had huge bruises on his face and his eye. But yeah, he was good. So thank the Lord for aconite and Arnica.
I can just picture him joking about how cool the accident was. That's what those boys do at that age, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And also he loves to snowboard. And so I send him all the time when he goes down the hill, I give him Arnica that he keeps in his pocket. And the funny thing is that if he falls and hurts himself, he'll just take some Arnica, wait a few minutes, and then he's back up and going because, you know, the Arnica works so fast that they feel great afterwards. And then he's back up and going. I guess that's good and bad, right?
Right, exactly. Maybe you should take it easy, but.
Yeah. I know his friend was with us one time and he fell and I didn't see it, but he must have hit his head because he was sitting up when I got to him. He's kind of dazed. And this is a really good thing to know that I learned from Joette and the Banerjees is cuprum metallicum is great for head injuries. So I tried the Arnica with him once and didn't seem to do much. I gave him the cuprum and right away, within 5 minutes, he was feeling fine. And he said, I want to get up and go snowboarding again. And I was saying to him, no, you need to rest. You fell hard. And he was saying that his head was hurting like at an 8 out of 10. You know, and so it was pretty bad. And so I made him rest for a while, but the cuprum is really amazing. So that's a great one to know about for head injuries.
Right. Very good. Very, very good. Especially moms with teenage boys. I have a friend here in Texas who has 3 teenage boys. And when I had an accident myself where I cut my hand, I knew I could call her right away because she uses a lot of homeopathy because she's got 3 teenage boys. I know she's dealt with injuries before, you know.
Yes.
So that's great.
Okay. Do we have time for one more story?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear another one.
So tick disease is something I'm passionate about because the Ledum has helped me just so wonderfully with fighting tick disease.
So real quick, in Wisconsin, there's a lot of ticks and they carry Lyme's disease and other diseases, right? Not just Lyme's.
Yes, there are a number of tick diseases that you can have, some of them worse than others. But a lot of people suffer from that on the East Coast and in this area, and they don't realize that it gets misdiagnosed a lot as chronic inflammatory conditions like fibromyalgia or other things. So I was not feeling well for a long time and finally went and was tested for tick disease and found out that I had 3 different tick diseases. I chose to use Ledum instead of anything else. And it worked amazing. Within, 4 or 5 hours, I was up doing things and feeling so much better. And so I've used that for many months, almost a year probably. I feel so much better. I've seen it work amazingly. Our dog came down with tick disease. I woke up one morning and she wasn't eating and she was lethargic, just laying around and limping when she got up.
How would you know that was tick disease? I would think maybe they ate something weird. I mean,
because I've seen it so many times. We've had several pets that have had tick disease, and horses, dogs, humans. I recognize it.
okay.
So anyway, I gave her a dose of Leadum. I called the vet and I scheduled an appointment for the afternoon. By the time we got to the vet, she was totally fine.
Wow.
How amazing it works. And when I got there, he said, she seems fine, and I said, no, she has a tick disease. Can you test her, please? Turns out she had 3 tick diseases.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So, but she was really fine after that first dose of Leadum. I could have just kept giving her Leadum, but I wanted to be sure. We actually, before I knew about all this, we had a dog that passed away from a tick disease. It was pretty traumatic. I've seen it work with horses the same way. We had a friend's horse that was not moving very well, would not run to her, would not turn, not very hungry. I said, give her a dose of the Leadum. It sounds like tick disease. She did. She gave her the dose in the morning. She came home from work in the afternoon, and her horse came running up to her just fine.
Wow.
So that is how amazing it is with tick diseases. Of course, if people have had tick diseases for a long period of time, it can be more difficult to see the results, but it's an amazing remedy.
And maybe it's not even as often as simple as taking like Leadum or something once it's been with you for a long time.
Exactly. It can be more complex, but yeah, I've seen it work like this many more times than what I just said.
So do you have any recommendations? Like, I know a lot of people will get a tick disease and they don't even know they were ever bit by a tick. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you just kind of being aware of your body and how you're feeling. And
yeah, rashes on your body, because a rash that is, you don't know where it came from. That could be a tick bite that developed into a tick disease. Yeah, if you're feeling lethargic, if you feel like you can't think, tired all the time, those are some of the symptoms that I dealt with personally.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Yeah, I know this is definitely a big issue with a lot of people. And I think I've actually heard about some famous people that had tick diseases. Like I think Avril Lavigne did and Tommy Hilfiger's daughter did. And I think that awareness is growing and it's important so people know, what's going on.
Right. And I would encourage people to look at Joette's blog, because she has a really good blog about tick disease and what to do for tick bites. Check that out, because that has all the information on it.
It's like a protocol she developed, and she says she has yet to see it fail once you get the tick bite. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. If you get a bite, definitely take some Leadum. Even if you don't have a tick disease, take some Leadum. I give my horses and our dog Leadum about once a month just to prevent. I know we don't encourage homeopathy as a preventative, but you don't know when an animal gets bit by a tick necessarily, because they're outside. You can't see the bite marks.
So you kind of do it prophylactically, so to speak.
I do, yes.
But it seems well justified, because you're in an area where it's pretty heavy with ticks, and you're in the country, I assume, right?
Yes.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so Kate, I want to hear the big story. You just showed me your arm, and there are stitches going the entire length of your forearm on 2 different sides. And you had a terrible accident the story is amazing. So just go ahead and take it away and tell us what happened. I'm so sorry you got hurt.
Yeah, it wasn't fun having it happen, but so many good things have come out of it. And so I'm so thankful. I'm thankful to be alive, really. So here's the story. I was at a horse show, and we had a new young horse, and I took her into a trail class and I rode her through, and she was nervous about everything in the class. She doesn't have a lot of show experience. So at the end of the trail class, I got off of her and I thought, phew, we made it and I'm alive.
Right.
And then I proceeded to walk her over a log. So I had the rein in one hand, and she spoofed. And she ran me over, and I ended up underneath her, holding onto her rein. And she was kind of bucking on top of me, like over the top of me. And so she ended up stepping on my arm. I don't remember it happening. I just remember being on the ground and thinking, curl up in a ball so she doesn't step on you. And then I got up, and I remember my arm. This is kind of gross. I don't know. Is it okay to say? But my arm was hanging from skin and muscle.
Oh.
So I said, Serena, go get my homeopathy kit.
That's your daughter.
Yes, my daughter.
Your budding homeopath.
Yes, and they were saying, somebody call an ambulance. And I said, no, don't call an ambulance. Serena, go get my home. And I was very emphatic, about the homeopathy.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see her. She was kind of, standing there like she of course went to get it.
I can see everybody standing. Don't get an ambulance. What the heck is a homeopathy kit?
Yeah, right. I wonder what they were thinking. And so she got it, and I didn't realize this, but I had an open fracture, and my brother was there, thankfully, and he came up and he held my arm so that the bleeding would stop. And Serena kept dosing me with the strongest Arnica and Hypericum that I have along with me, which was Arnica 1M and Hypericum 1M. Looking back, I wish that I would have had the 10 M's with me, and I would have done that. So now, guess what I ordered? Arnica 10M and Hypericum 10M, and I will not go anywhere without them. You can be sure of that. So anyway, they got me in the car, took me to the local hospital, which was a very small hospital. I was in the ER. And I just had Serena keep dosing me with the Arnica and Hypericum every, 10 to 30 minutes. At first, it was every few minutes, and then it gradually got further and further apart. So in the first ER, I was there for probably 4 hours or so. Serena just kept giving me that, and they kept asking me, do you need pain meds? And I said, no, I don't need any pain medication. I'm fine. I was in pain, obviously, but
right.
I wasn't in enough pain that I felt like it wasn't controlled.
Right.
So Arnica and the Hypericum were amazing. It made it bearable, and it did not have aconite with me. I wish I would have, because I would have taken that as well for shock.
Right.
But they kept saying to me, you're going to go into shock. We need to get you to the hospital. And I said, no, I'm fine. The Arnica and Hypericum really took care of that too, which was amazing. So anyway, they ended up having to transport me for surgery about an hour and a half away. So I had a bumpy car ride with my arm, in a makeshift brace. And then I had another about 5 hours until I had surgery. So they had to...
Because they had a hard time finding a surgeon who was qualified enough to deal with your injury.
4th of July weekend, and they called several hospitals who wouldn't take me. And they gave different reasons, but I think they just didn't want to come in on the holiday weekend.
Yes. And I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you really need to see the photographs of her arm. I mean, you do not appreciate the magnitude of this injury until you see, I mean, it's like Frankenstein arm, all the way down to the stitches.
Yeah, it was crazy. So thankfully we found a surgeon that would take me and do surgery. So in the surgery, I had 5 fractures on my arm, and he had to cut through 2 muscles to put 2 plates into my arm. I also had bruised ribs. I never had an x-ray of my ribs, so I'm still not sure, were they broken, are they bruised? I don't know, but they were extremely painful. And I had my cheekbone that was also bruised because it was very sore. I didn't really know those things as much when I was in the hospital, because the Arnica and Hypericum really took away the pain of those things.
Mm-hmm.
My ribs hurt, but not extreme. But by the time I got home, I realized those were very injured as well. Wow. So long story short, I had surgery, and I had a nerve block in my arm for the surgery. And after the nerve block, I was in the hospital for another about 12 hours. And they kept telling me to take pain medicine, and they almost did not let me leave the hospital without taking pain meds. And so finally, I agreed to take some Tylenol just because they were so adamant. They said, you are going to need pain meds, and we want to see how you respond. They actually wanted me to take oxycodone. They wanted to see how I responded to it while I was still in the hospital.
Like if you're allergic or something.
Right. And I just said, no, I don't need that. I'm going to be fine. They wouldn't believe me. And I asked them about homeopathy, and they just said they'd have to check with the doctor. And I said, okay, I won't use it then. Wink, wink.
Right. Don't worry. This is off the table. I was just kidding. So your daughter had been dosing you kind of privately, secretly, without them seeing.
Yes. In the first hospital, they were actually good about it. It was openly that they let her do it, because one of the attendants, his wife was studying to be a naturopath, and so he knew about it.
Oh,
thank the Lord,
Yeah.
So the attending physician there, she didn't know that I was doing it, but the people who were actually with me, they knew, and they didn't care. So that was great. The second hospital, not so much. So, But that's okay. So finally I took a Tylenol so that they would let me go home. And I'm like, oh, I feel so much better now.
Thank you.
You
So
know?
glad you guys have Tylenol.
I'm going to be fine with the Tylenol,
Oh, that's
So
fun.
anyway, I went home and I just used homeopathy. Then I did have a consult with Joette, and she put me on a protocol. I'm actually taking a lot of different remedies. I never really realized you could take so many remedies at a time. But I guess in an emergency, acute situation and a traumatic thing that I went through, you can do those things for a short time. And so I have a huge list of remedies that I'm taking right now, but I'm gradually able to come off of some of them as things change in my body and heal. So,
and I'm sure, did you take the Survivalist Guide?
Did. Okay, that is something that everyone needs to know about. I love the Survivalist Guidebook, and that is a book that I cannot live without. That book has so many great things in it. I think everyone listening needs to take that course because it is a lifesaver, literally, in so many ways. It has every emergency situation that you can think of and how to handle it homeopathically.
Yeah, not all of Joette's courses come with like a binder, a book, but this is one of them that does. And so I'm sure a lot of the remedies she put you on for your injury are also discussed in that course. They're listed in the book.
Right. I will tell you, on my follow-up visits with my surgeon, I had one a couple weeks ago, and he said that the swelling in my hand and in my arm is greatly less than he would have expected it to be, considering what I went through in the surgery and everything. So I know that's due to homeopathy for sure. That's Lycopodium 30 is great for edema, and that's what Joette put me on for that. But then again, the Arnica is also great for that, and I was taking that for quite a while as well.
Interesting. We use Lycopodium 30 on my little cow out here because he had pretty bad edema, and that was just one that Joette told me to do, and I was like, I didn't know about Lycopodium. Okay, and I just did it, but now I'm piecing it together right now. That's why she picked it.
Yeah, and I didn't know about that either, so that's definitely one thing that I'm going to remember. And
it breaks my heart that we don't have homeopathy in the hospitals like we should, because I mean, for heaven's sakes, just in the emergency room, please just put it in the emergency room,
Right.
Such a big help.
Can you imagine, having a horse step on your arm? What kind of bruising should I have had on my arm and my hand? And then having the trauma of having stitches on both sides of my arm all the way out my forearm. Okay, I had no bruising. I mean, there was no bruising.
We can see the photos you're sending us. We're going to put the photos on this blog, but I mean, it's hard to believe, Kate.
Yes, it is. It's really hard to believe. I had some swelling. But yeah, it was really amazing. You'll have to look at the pictures, then you'll be able to see the full scope of what homeopathy actually did and how it helped.
Kate, you're awesome. I loved hearing this story. I'm so glad you're feeling better. I love homeopathy.
Me too.
No, Joette is awesome. We love Joette.
Hey, Joette.
I know. So thank you so much for joining us and for being a mom with Moxie and being willing to share your story and for helping out our listeners learn. And I'm sure, are you working in your community? Do you have study groups or anything like that? Or have you thought about starting one? Because you're rocking it. You've got lots of information.
Yes, I actually want to start a study group soon, and I'm excited to do it. But we do help a lot of people with homeopathy and talk a lot about it. So there are a lot of people that have learned about it, and it's just fun to share and see people's lives changed with it.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kate. Thank you again.
Are you or someone you know a mom with Moxie? Well, we're on the hunt for you. And of course, we don't want to hear just from moms, but from anyone who uses and loves homeopathy. Reach out to my podcast team and let us know why you're a mom with Moxie. For more information, contact podcast@joettecalabrese.com.